Hello and welcome to Mousecast, the podcast where the mind meets the magic. Hey, it's guys' night tonight, so Megan is currently at Walt Disney World, and she gave us a quick update, and she said, quote, even her ponytail is sweating right now. Hawk, apparently it's a little warm in Orlando, huh?
It is kind of hot down here. It's been a little rough. The car, when I got in it to go home from work, the car temp said 114 today, and it took about 20 minutes to get it down below 100. So
A little toasty.
Yeah, toasty warm.
Little bit toasty. So, but tonight we are talking about, it's Matt's musings, and what better thing to muse about this week than D23. Chris is with us tonight. Chris, welcome back to Mousecast. Okay, guys, so I thought the first thing we would do is kind of walk through first we did two Mousecast questions of the week this time, and our first was just a kind of an overall question we talk about. How would you rate the Disney Experiences presentation at D23? Overall, it seemed like people were satisfied, with the majority saying it was fair. Well, at least only 10% said it was poor or dreadful. So, I mean, at least, if you get it as an A, B, C, D, or F, at least it had the majority gave it a C or above.
Okay, so before you jump to the next one, Chuck, and before we say anything else, I want each of the hosts to give their letter grade on A, B, C, D, or F overall on D23.
All right, Matt, we'll start with you.
I gave it a B. I know the announcements weren't that great, but Chuck and I were talking before we came on. Neil Patrick Harris can host this every single year. He was phenomenal. I think he made the show. So that's why I gave it a solid B. I know what was announced wasn't that great, but overall I thought the show itself was really well put together. So
yeah, and for those that are watching, as you're popping in, pop in the chat your thoughts. How would you rate the overall Experiences presentation? Good, excellent, good, fair, poor, dreadful. I was with Matt. I gave it a good rating, and for many of the same reasons.
But I'm talking the entire D23 this year.
All right, so you're talking about D23 whole thing, soup to nuts. Well, so the challenge with that is the challenge with that is that how much did we who were not in the room, how much were we able to really connect to D23? Because you had about a handful of panels. You had
you're overanalyzing what I'm looking for.
Yeah,
overall, how satisfied are you with D23 this year? What would you give it? A, B, C, D, or F?
I'd give it a B minus, because I thought it, and this is something Matt and I were talking about. It met the expectations that I had, but I will caveat that to say the expectations were low. Mark Jones says Neil Patrick Harris made the presentation fun, and I agree with him. That's why I made, for the Experiences presentation, gave it a B. If he wasn't there, he saved it. To be honest, he saved the whole thing. Otherwise, it would have been not anywhere near as, at least enjoyable, even though we didn't get some of what we were hoping for. And Chris, we're glad you're here. Glad you remembered to join us. And so all right, Hawk, so your thoughts.
Hold on, one quick question. Matt, given that clarity, would you change your grade, or would you stick with the B?
For what I consumed of D23, it still would have been a B.
Okay.
I didn't find like it was gripped to your seat, like have to watch. I kind of had lower expectations of what they were going to announce this year anyway. I figured there wasn't going to be much as far as Villains Land, which was like the big, people want more updates for in Disney World. And they gave a little bit, but not to the extent I feel like people wanted. And we'll discuss, as we go through stuff, we can expand on it more. But I thought there were some, things that were mentioned. It was like, oh, they're like Monstropolis opening next year. Didn't see that coming. I figured it was still another year or so away.
Not the coaster, just Monstropolis.
Just the land, which we're going to get to that in a minute.
But even still, this seems like it's kind of like ahead of what I was expecting. I was figuring 2028 for that. And just having a little bit more details on Cars Land also than what they originally gave. 2 attractions versus just one big one. So it seems like it's going to be a little bit more interactive than what I was originally assuming. But overall, like it was, I'm not going to any of the other parks soon, and some of the stuff was just kind of repeats of stuff that they've announced throughout the year.
To me, to be honest, when I saw it summed up perfectly, I shared it on my own page. D23 could have been an email. I mean, to me, that was a D+ at best. Like at best, I would almost borderline on that being an F.
Hi, Nick. Welcome.
You got a new CEO coming out that should have come out and shocked people. Like they should have found some way to come out with something for Josh D'Amaro to enter his Disney reign with a bang. And there was a dud. It was a thud. There was nothing that was so wow that like just was the talking point. Figment fans were happy. The people that were looking for Villains Land were, I got a bone thrown to it. But no real dates, no real clarity. They were very, very vague. And I feel like they really missed out on the opportunity to dive much deeper than they did. And it was like, it was 2025 version 2.0 and 2027 will be version 3.0. I don't think there's going to be any big announcements coming because of how big the announcements were last year. I don't think there's going to be any real big wow factor for the next 5 to 7, maybe even decade. Like not being funny. I just don't.
I think it'll be a few years before you see something major, but first things first, I think let's go through some of the announcements and just kind of summarize them real quick to catch everybody up again. So, and I've organized these by park, and so anybody shout if I missed something. So, over and Mark Jones says that he agrees with you, Hawk. He says people were expecting big things and got vagueness. Chris says the only news that surprised me with the announcements for Everest and Spaceship Earth. Nick says, I'm thinking after all the current projects are done, and I think you're probably right there. So over at Carousel of Progress, we have a date for it. It will be opening in spring 2027, new voices, so kind of a nice bit to add. To some degree, the purists and those who want to stay classic might not be as happy, but Jamie Lee Curtis and Ryan Cranston will now play Sarah and John Peabody. Matt, to your point, Piston Peak, we now have the names for the two attractions. So the major attraction will be Cars Ridge Run Rally, and then the second attraction will be Miss Fritter's Daredevil Spin-Along. Tom is with us tonight. Tom says Jamie Lee rules, and she's going to be awesome. She actually put out a post that said this is one of the highlights of her entire career, is being in the Carousel of Progress. Villains Land, this one was kind of interesting because they said, and we've been thinking about the name, and it's Villains Land. Yeah, no duh. Wasn't that was always the name that we always thought it was going to be. I thought that was kind of interesting. But they did.
It's not Villains Park yet, Chuck?
Yeah, well, again, we're not going to get to. They're not going to do a fifth gate, and we knew that. I mean, that just was as much as everybody wanted it. To Hawk's point about the fact that they've already committed to so much, there was no way they could commit to a fifth gate. Yeah, Mark is the same way. He says, I assume that was always the name. We all did. So some attractions were added into or announced. So the first is going to be that there's going to be a new roller coaster. So we have another mountain in the Magic Kingdom. Chris, by the way, says, I'll miss Gene Shepard's carousel narration, but it'll be interesting to hear Bryan Cranston and Jamie Lee's narrations. And he also says the golf clap for Hawk since he lives on a golf course. So we do have another coaster coming. It's going to be a Maleficent mountain coaster of some sort. And we also have a dark ride. It's going to be possibly a water ride, although there's some conjecture as to whether or not there will actually be water involved. The ride vehicle in the concept art kind of looked like a boat, but some are saying that might not be the case. Anyway, it's going to be underneath, apparently, the Evil Queen's castle and featuring the magic mirror. And then we had Glenn Close come out and reprise her role as Cruella de Vil with a whole fun little shtick. And she kept talking about, but are you working on my attraction, she said. So we have nothing confirmed, but that makes you wonder, is there going to be a third attraction or some sort of experience related to Cruella de Vil, but they just haven't put anything out yet
there has to be.
On that.
You can't open Villains Land on 2 attractions.
Yeah, I think they have to, and so, but they just don't have anything. They didn't have any more specifics about it. Over in Epcot, yeah, and Mark Jones says the total lack of specifics drove me crazy. The lack of dates was tough too. Mark, we're going to get to that because I think that's going to be a big deal here.
Chuck, do you want to discuss these as we go?
I think I'll go through the announcements just real quick, and then we can start to talk about them because I don't know that we're going to talk about every single announcement. Spaceship Earth, totally redoing it. Completely getting rid of the story of communication and getting to a new story of human connection. Every scene will be every scene will be done in Spaceship Earth. It's not a golf ball. It's Spaceship Earth. The big one, and we'll talk more about this after the recap. But Dreamfinder's back, and the entire pavilion is going to be reimagined. But we don't have anything more than that. And again, we'll talk more about that in a minute. Hollywood Studios actually didn't have a whole lot because they gave an update on Monstropolis. They confirmed Harryhausen's restaurant, which we kind of already knew, but this is official confirmation. And to Matt's point, the land will be opening in 2027, but the door coaster will be opening after that. And there will be a new theater show coming in 2027. It's called Welcome to Monstropolis, which obviously is taking the space previously used by Muppets 3D. Over in Animal Kingdom, a couple of interesting announcements. For Indiana Jones, first and foremost, the name of the attraction will be Indiana Jones and the Myth of the Jade, but Myth of the Jade Serpent. But more importantly, Harrison Ford himself is the model for the audio animatronic Indy. So when you see Indiana Jones, it will have the face of Harrison Ford, which was kind of cool. Over at Tropical Americas, the dark ride there has a new name. Or has a name. It's Antonio's Fiesta de Encanto. And the other big one is Expedition Everest. They're going to fix the Yeti. Now, I say fixing in quotes because the whole point is that, well, the Yeti's going to move again. Okay. Again, we don't have any details as to just how. So that's where it'll be a little bit interesting. For Disneyland and California Adventure, a couple of nighttime things. Remember Dreams Come True fireworks show returns in February, and over in Disneyland, the Magic Happens parade will be coming in 2027. The big announcement for Disneyland, is the complete overhaul and reimagining of Tomorrowland. But again, nothing beyond that. We're going to redo Tomorrowland next. Coco attraction, they did an update on it, but really the only news is the no height requirement for it. And World of Color has a new show coming, or an updated show coming in February. Over at Disneyland Paris and Disney Adventure World, Space Mountain is going to be returning to the original Jules Verne theme and soundtrack. And over in Adventure World, they gave an update on Lion King Land that it's going to be a flume-based attraction to retell the Lion King story, and construction actually is already underway. And so more will probably be coming. For Tokyo and Hong Kong, Space Mountain Earthrise was announced for Tokyo Disneyland. This is going to be an all-new Space Mountain coming to Tokyo Disneyland. The Wreck-It Ralph attraction, which is already underway and in construction, is going to be called Sugar Rush Sweet Rescue, and it'll open up in the spring of 2027. And they gave an update on Spider-Man Land for Hong Kong. New coaster there. Featuring the Spider-Bots and the WEB, or WEB, standing for Worldwide Engineering Brigade, and also a new drop tower experience. Over in Shanghai Disneyland, Avengers Campus, we got a date. It's opening in 2028. And I'm sorry, that was for Shanghai. Over, I think, for the Wreck-It Ralph attraction. I put it in the wrong park there. And then finally for Disney Cruise Line and more, announced 2 new ships coming. They're going to be kind of a mid-level class of ship, bigger than the Magic, which were the original ships, but smaller than the Wish, so sort of in between the two. New sailings out of San Diego for the Disney's Believe, which is the newest of the Wish class that is coming out. The Moana will be the new lobby icon. Tinkerbell will be on the bow, and Buzz and Woody on the stern. And then finally for Disney Plus, got a lot of praise for the Imagineering Story Season 2 coming in 2028. If you've never seen the Imagineering Story, it's well worth it. Leslie Iwerks does an amazing job of that, which leads us, by the way, to our second question of the week. And that's why I wanted to run through the updates first. So most of you seem to think that the return of Dreamfinder and the Imagination update was what you were most excited about, with at 66%, with 22% of you saying fixing the Yeti was the most exciting announcement, and then a handful talked about Spaceship Earth and the Tomorrowland reimagining at Disneyland and the DCL ships. But the vast majority were either about Dreamfinder or about the Yeti. And so that
think about that, Chuck. Think about that for a second. Like when we talk about D23 as a whole, and you post that question, and those two responses are the top news. Like that is an underwhelming D23.
Well, and that's what gets to why, I would give it, I will say it's good. And the reason I say it was good, it met the expectations I had, which again, were low. I was not expecting a whole lot from D23 this year because of everything that's going on. Chris says this one, meaning the Spaceship Earth refurb, is going to hit him hard because Spaceship Earth is his favorite at Epcot. However, he wants to see how it comes together with the reimagining. And of course, he'll always remember to thank the Phoenicians. I thought it was funny that the band on the stage was called the Phoenicians. So there were a lot of tongue-in-cheek bits there. Chris also says the Yeti better be better than the disco dancing Yeti. And they even went there. They admitted that it's Disco Yeti and had some fun with it. Finally, Mark Jones asks, how long does it take to film a series? I suspect that's probably because they're doing a series on everything new. So that's why it's 2028. Hey, Danny has joined us tonight. Hey, welcome, Danny. Glad you're with us. So we're talking about D23. Okay, guys. So Hawk, I'll start with you. What was the one announcement that you thought was, of the announcements that came, was kind of the, and oh, by the way, Nick says he'll believe the Spaceship Earth renovation when he sees it. I think it's probably the one that they were planning to do with COVID and then dropped, so they're just picking it back up. Hawk, what announcement, perked your interest the most, but then overall your thoughts, because I think you're right. There was a lot of, and Mark Jones said it earlier, and I think it's exactly right, the total lack of specifics and the lack of dates. That was the one piece that I think frustrated me most.
The last 2 years, they have literally just teased what's coming instead of providing any definition for fans. And here's what concerns me a lot with where I think there's some potential glitches in this too. And I think this is also part of why they may not be, defining some of this stuff, because I think some of this is going to get scrapped. I'm going to be totally honest with you. I think the way the economy's heading into a struggle. There's a potential election within the next, there's going to be an election in the next 3 years. We're going to have a new president. Economic downturn could happen any day, depending on what's going on. There's a lot of volatility right now. So if there's volatility and the economy tanks for some reason, it's an extended, like literally we fall into recession.
We go back to 2008, 2009. Yeah.
People aren't going to the parks. And this is a ton of financial commitment, which I understand, and they have it. But I think a lot of stuff's going to get scrapped because the attendance isn't going to be there. And I wonder seriously, like, is 2 new cruise ships really a good call? Because they're the highest priced cruise line out there. Disney is super, super expensive unless you're jumping on Ritz-Carlton or one of the.
Well, yeah, they're the highest priced of the family friendly style. There are a lot of much higher priced cruise lines, but that's uber luxury. Yeah,
but I'm saying like mainstream cruising,
right?
Disney is the highest price, and it's significantly 30-40% higher than jumping on Caribbean or Royal or Virgin or crowds have been low, Danny.
Yeah, Danny says crowds are reportedly low this whole summer. Yeah, that's exactly it.
They have been. So, like, what is the real thing that's going on here? And I'm a little skeptical. I don't have faith. They promised Villains Land last year, and they got land cleared. Like, I watch building in Florida. They can put a housing development up in 8 months and have the whole subdivision from forest to finish in 8 months' time. So the fact that they only got the ground cleared in 12 months, that was a little concerning, and we had talked about it. There was no real definition. The Imagineers were going back to look at it. And then, what did we say when we talked about Villains Land? They better not do a forced perspective version of Maleficent's castle. They need to make it real. What are they doing? Forced perspective version of Maleficent's castle on the side of a mountain with a roller coaster. Like, they're not getting what the fans are truly clamoring for. And there's a lot of fear, even, going to some of the other parks. Like Dreamfinder, everybody's super excited for his return. That's great. But what do they do for the return? What do they do? Like, that's got the opportunity to tick a lot of people off. Like, if the change doesn't go well, like, they really are just kind of, I don't think they're sure what they want to do or how they want to do it, and they don't want to commit to it. And I think they use D23 to get some fan feedback to actually finalize plans sometimes or confirm things. This is like their test market event now. It used to be an event where they told you what was happening and then went and did it. Now it's like they tell it and like, oh, does everybody approve? Does it feel inclusive?
So what you're saying is they're trying to use D23 like a focus group.
Yeah, I really feel like that's what it's turning into the last couple of years. I think it's more of a, check yes or no. Do you approve or do you not? Because if enough people check no, maybe we'll reevaluate what we were thinking of.
Yeah. So Matt, what do you think?
We spent 22 minutes talking.
Yeah, so Kyle's asking, have we spent 22 minutes yet talking about Dreamfinder? And I just sent a response and said, we'll get there. We'll get there. So, Matt, what do you think? Just kind of overall, let's start with Villains Land, because really I think that was the one that we were all talking about a couple of shows ago about, what do we hope to hear? And it was, Villains Land, but details. And we got some details, but in your opinion, did we get enough?
I think what they're going to do is they're going to sprinkle out details for the next couple of years as they gradually build the park. I think that's what they're going to do. They did mention that for at least the thrill coaster, they are looking into trying some stuff that they haven't done before. I believe they mentioned that. So you're not going to see me on it, but I'm kind of interested to see what those different things are. Mm-hmm. It's funny because you mentioned the poll, and I actually voted for. I was surprised I was excited about the Yeti being fixed, even though I won't go on the coaster. I just feel like that was something that we've talked about before, like thinking Disney wouldn't do, and here they are like, hey, we're gonna fix it. So kind of like a little bit of like a shocking moment there. I feel like how they're gonna do it, we'll see. I've seen a couple of different ideas people have thrown around. But overall, it was just like, okay, this knowing like there's not going to be much. Like, we know how Disney's been lately. After they announced like they were going to do Villains Land, and that was like the big hurrah a couple of years ago, it's just kind of been like, okay, we want more. And Disney's just like, well, we don't really have anything. We're kind of like Hawk mentioned, we're kind of like dipping our toe in the water and seeing, what people think. And it's just like, okay, they're going a little too slow, I think. They're being a little too careful.
Well, we talked about it, we said this a couple of weeks ago that, we had a feeling that Disney was going to play it safe. And that was the move. This was the play it safe move.
I don't know if I'd even give them that much credit. I think they just really, no, I'm being serious. I think they just really held back on a lot of stuff. I mean, don't get me wrong, like, the Yeti, for example, they're not going to take that foundation out and pull that Yeti and do the things that they said they had to do the first time in order to fix it. Technology has advanced with animatronics so much that they'll be able to put lightweight componentry in there and get the effect done in an easier manner.
Yeah, that's what I was wondering is if it's...
That was one of the things that I had heard that they were going to do is basically skin the Yeti down to the mechanical stuff, because
to get
they
Violent
can
Hunter,
replace all the parts and make it lighter so it'll move.
Yeah. Because here's the thing, the Yeti went down, so it was built in 2005. The Yeti went down in 2005 in 1 second. So it's been down for 20 years. It went down, I think, in 2006 or 2006. maybe 2007. I'm trying to remember when it went down.
Chuck, never mind 20 years of animatronics. Look what's been done in the last 3.
Well, but where I'm going to, and Mark Jones brings the point, he says, I think there will be carbon fiber lightweight Yeti soon. And that's my point, that 20 years now has passed since this problem was, and engineering has advanced, material science has advanced. So I think that Disney can apply new technology to solve the problem, or at least solve it enough. And that's why I said, fixing, because what they said was the Yeti will move again. Okay. But are we going to have a slower arm or everything like that? Because that was the problem.
No,
there was so much force in the arm.
The Matterhorn. They're just moving it to the Matterhorn.
Yeah, exactly. They're just going to move it to the Matterhorn. So this is one I'm actually very interested in, the fixing of the Yeti, and I hope maybe that the Imagineering story too will pick up on this, because it could be that it is that new technology has essentially bailed Disney out on this one.
Now, so Chuck, go ahead and give your thoughts on the biggest.
Well, to me, there were 2. My actual vote back on the poll actually was for Spaceship Earth. I think it was the only one that voted for Spaceship Earth, only because, number one, Epcot is my park. You know that. I love Epcot. And this was one that is a big deal. This is from 1982. It has not, the scenes, with the exception of the Return to Earth portion, it has not changed at all, practically. Well, correction, there was one scene that was added at the very top when you have the Steve Jobs scene at the very end. That was added in 2005, maybe somewhere in there. But really, it hasn't changed since then. Narration has changed, yes, but the scenes haven't changed. All that is supposedly going away, or some way being updated.
The Phoenicians were actually in existence.
Yes, since the Phoenicians were in existence. So to me, that's a big, big overhaul. And again, I go back to some notes from Spaceship Earth when we were kind of talking about. There was one of the games that we were doing, I think 2 Truths and a Lie, where we talked about that actually Spaceship Earth was going to be renovated during COVID, right around COVID time, and it got dropped for obvious reasons because of COVID. Chris agrees. He says that's why it's going to be so hard to see it go away. And by go away, I think we're talking about just the changing of the story. I don't know if the question's going to be how much will the scenes really change.
But see, here's the other thing that's kind of interesting. Again, getting into the animatronics and the technology and the way things are now, like kids see those older animatronics, they don't have the same pop and effect they used to be an educational tool when we first saw them in the 80s, right? Mm-hmm. When Disney started these things, like Epcot especially, that was an educational park.
Yes, it was.
I remember going to the Living Seas exhibit and going to experience.
Absolutely.
I remember talking to a trainer there and writing back and forth before my trip to learn things about what they did there. And then I got a tour when I was there. There was an educational value that has slipped a little bit. And obviously it's become more of a theme park and, but the nations, the World Showcase, when you walk around there and you get to experience things with people from the places you're supposed to be visiting, that immersion is a great experience. And I mean, there's a lot of things that Disney does great, but they've been doing that same thing for 50 years and people are clamoring for that evolution. And I think the rides like Spaceship Earth with, now you have Elon Musk and, the Bill Gates and, like everything with Apple, and like you can almost start at where it ended. You could almost start at where it ended and move forward and still have just as much information and amazement to fill that ride. Now, I do hope, to Chris's point, that they still acknowledge some of the early stuff, and it'll be interesting to see when they reset the scenes, because they said all the scenes are changing, but do they change the story a ton or just update the scenes to be a little more relevant, or do they shorten them? Do they make the periods longer? How do we do this? It's going to be interesting to see that. And I will give that a lot of credit.
Yeah. So Chris
Do
Chris
some
says,
cool-
hopefully they can still add the Phoenicians to the story of human connection, because again, that's what the theme is going to be now. Instead of communication, it's going to be human connection, which, as a communications guy, communication is a core part of how we are connected, but nevertheless. And also how they develop the common language. Will they be added to the news story? That all remains to be seen. And Nick says this will be a 2-year change at minimum.
Longer.
I think it could be even longer.
I think
to be honest.
I think you're 3 to 5 years to renovate the inside of that.
Yeah, I think absolutely it's going to take every bit of that.
Especially if they change the ride vehicle. If they wind up like modernizing the ride
Updating the vehicle.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That would be, they're going to have some time in there.
And it might be a good time to do that, because those ride vehicles, and all the technology inside of it may need some updating as well. So, Matt, your other thoughts on are there any of the other announcements? Obviously, I guess let's get to the one that everybody's been talking about. And we'll start our quote 22 minutes on Dreamfinder. And that's, your thoughts about Dreamfinder. That was the one that got the biggest cheer. However, as we were kind of talking about pre-show, did it seem like a bit of an afterthought to you?
I think they wanted to include it. They just didn't know how. And the pop that they got, I think, is what they expected. But I think it was just ill-placed in the presentation of the show. So my overall thoughts is it's great. It needed to be done. The whole figment of imagination. And you go through that ride, and it's just like, not really feeling it. I get a little bit of it, but give me more figment. Give me more imagination. Like there was some of it in there. And the Dreamfinder coming back, I'm not outside of hearing bits and pieces of the Dreamfinder. I'm not super familiar with how that tied into Epcot and stuff like that. I don't think I was there when Dreamfinder was around. I could be wrong, but I think that's a great addition, especially that Disney said, "Hey, we heard you and we're bringing them back." Okay, but this kind of goes back to, if you're listening to the fans, then how much are you really listening? If that's like your big, like, "Hey, we heard you" kind of moment, is just like, okay, this has been going on for years and now you're finally doing something about it. But what about everything else that we've been asking for and clamoring for and stuff like that? You're giving us a little snippet of that.
All right,
Chuck, no, I was going to say, Chuck, I want you to give me your take first.
All right, so this is the nostalgia one, where there has been a lot of nostalgia. I'm right there. I'd love to see Dreamfinder coming back, because it gets back to classic Epcot, and also the Imagination Pavilion. It feels 1980s and dated because the technology is very dated. The story is still okay, just in the concept of the story, but it needs to be completely retold and, frankly, expanded back to what it was. Because, as for those who may not remember, the original Journey to Imagination attraction was much longer, possibly double or at least a third longer, if not like double the length, but it got cut back for all sorts of different reasons. I love the fact that it's coming. What I wish, and this is, Kyle said it earlier, and Kyle's exactly right, some concept art or something would have been great. And then he also says they also need to make the track longer like it once was. Exactly. I think they need to get back to what it was.
Wait back.
Well, but you can, the way you do it, you can have multiple cars running at the same time. And there are multiple cars running, so that's not a major issue. But the presentation of it, and that's why I asked Matt this too. To me, it did feel almost like it was we got to end with a bang, and this is the biggest bang we could find. But it was, guess what? Dreamfinder's returning, and we're going to redo the Imagination Pavilion. Thanks for coming. Good night. Okay. So, what? How? Any idea of when? Is it just a meet and greet, or is it back in it left so many questions.
Do you know what you made me realize during this, Chuck?
Go for it.
Who's the new CEO?
Okay, yeah, Josh Tomorrow. Okay.
What was his role prior to this?
He was head of parks.
Okay. What has he heard for the last 5 years in the parks walking around. And I never even really put this together until we were just talking about it. The entire D23 was him listening to every bitch and complaint that he's heard about the parks over the last 5 years. Figment, Dreamfinder
nostalgia.
No. Dreamfinder and Figment coming back. Spaceship Earth needs an update. You need to fix the Yeti. Think about all the little things. And that's where his focus was. And I'm actually going to give my grade a little bit of a bump on the overall, putting this thought process in. I'll bring it to a C- instead of a D+. It still was extremely underwhelming. But I think Josh D'Amaro was in the mindset of what are the things we have to do to get the fan base back? Where are the complaints been in the park? Because that's where his focus was. And he has always been great about getting out into the park and listening to the fans direct, communicating,
Kyle says Lou, our good buddy over at WW Radio, has talked to Josh D'Amaro a few times, and he's pretty sure that Figment and Dreamfinder was a topic every single time. That doesn't surprise me.
Yeah, I don't think Lou Mongello is the reason that they're coming back.
No, but
but I do think Josh D'Amaro, does listen to the fans. I think where Josh struggles right now is the magnitude of this role is so much more than even Parks was. Like, it's such a big set of shoes to fill to be the CEO of Disney. And while he may think, as Parks, it being in charge of Parks, he comes out and says this stuff. This is what everybody's been telling him for 5 years. He thinks it's going to go over like, hot bread on butter. Or hot butter on bread. He's like, woohoo, we're rolling. But people are underwhelmed. They really did have huge announcements last year. And this year, I think part of that underwhelming aspect of it is we wanted more clarity. Josh wanted to come out and say, I've listened to you. I'm taking these steps that you have clamored for to me over the years, and we're going to move forward from there. I didn't even really think about that, Lou was the only entrepreneur.
Right, and that Kyle brings up a good point. Lou and WW Radio was actually on the floor, one of the handful of non-Disney entities that were allowed on the floor. So,
Kyle, don't get me wrong. I know they're tight.
Yeah.
All I'm saying is this was a generalized feedback that Josh heard constantly.
Well, and so Hawk, I want to go. Let's take a deeper dive on this. And folks, we apologize. This is going to be a longer show. If you're listening to this is going to be a long one.
You said 22 minutes on Dreamfinder.
Yeah, really. Well, we're going to get and I wonder this. I found it very interesting that the Disney Parks and Experiences presentation, we didn't see Josh D'Amaro at all. None. Was that surprising to you guys?
No,
not really.
All right, why is that, Matt? Why are you not surprised at that?
Well, we had I forget Maslam. He's the new.
Yes, Maslam came out.
Right. So, and he's the new Josh D'Amaro, right? I'm assuming, if I remember correctly.
Yes, he's the head of parks.
So it's his time to shine.
Well, experiences, but yeah.
Right. So take the ball and run with it. This is your section. This is what you're in charge of now. Take the ball and run with it. And the way it was presented with, like Josh D'Amaro, okay, great, he was there, but we've already talked about it. Neil Patrick Harris stole that show.
Yeah. Kyle says he was on the floor greeting guests. He was in advance, and Mark says maybe Josh wants to distance himself from the parks.
I don't think he wants to distance himself from the parks, Mark. I think what he wanted to do was make sure that his replacement got the due for it. I think Josh is very big on making sure people are recognized for what they're doing. He's always tried to be very good. I mean, Mark, I understand your point there. Josh is a smart enough guy. He knew there was no winning this year. There was nothing that was going to come out big enough to outdo what happened last year. So him taking a low-key approach during that aspect is smart. And also, it lets him showcase his new parks manager who's doing what the people asked for. So they're going to have more affinity towards a new guy. And one thing as CEO you want to make sure happens is that you don't lose your fan base at any other level. Like if everybody turns to Josh and says, well, you're CEO now, you need to focus on this and this and this. If he listened and took all his feedback from the last few years where he's been the parks manager, and he listens, makes changes, and then lets his new parks manager come out and announce all those changes and be there for it and be on stage, that's a win for Josh D'Amaro as a successful leader.
But at the same time, this is where, and Mark, so somebody brought it up here. Mark said, passing the baton rather than,
Kyle, did you give Dreamfinder a ride home one week, or what's going on? Did you take a
Kyle says, beg to differ. Dreamfinder beats out the announcements from last year. Don't stop believing. Kyle says last D23. I would have liked to have seen Josh actually pass that baton. Just at the very beginning, right off the top, welcome. We had a lot of great announcements last year. We have so much to follow up with you this year. And here's the thing. The elephant in the room was that everybody knew they could not top what they did last year. That's just not going to happen. So what do you do when you have an elephant in the room? You walk up and you shake its hand. So just, Josh, one of the things I think I would have recommended, I'm a PR guy, and so, maybe agree with it, maybe not, but just be right open. We had a lot of great announcements last year. We have updates for you. We're so excited to tell you about all the things that we've worked on in the last year to move forward on the announcements that we've already talked about. And we got a few new things to tell you about as well, and a few new surprises. It's my pleasure to introduce to you the head of Boom Boom, and there you go. Just acknowledge it.
But I think you have to step back.
What's that? Go ahead, Matt.
So I think the people that were gave presentations on the different updates and stuff like that, I think giving them the credit if they're working on those projects, giving them the spotlight to talk about stuff, I think gives a bigger
right. I just think Josh needed to start it off.
But
he needs to be the one.
That's the question though, because Bob never did that.
No,
yeah, he did.
Why?
Yeah,
What's
Bob Iger came out for some of the parks things. I'm pretty sure he started the parks things last year and then handed it off. He just welcomed everybody to begin it. Kind of like what D'Amaro did on Friday, I guess it was, for the entertainment, for the movies panel. He started it off and then handed it off to everybody. I think he just needed to do that.
I don't know if he did. To me, I don't think that necessarily happens for me, but I think it's all right the way he did it. I think there's some purpose behind it.
I'm sure there probably is. Yeah.
The more I think about it, it does make sense the way he did stuff. I just think there's a few, the economy is going to be a tough one because it's going to bring a lot of questions in over the next couple of years.
Chris, thanks for being with us. We'll catch you next time.
And then some of the other things, like Mark Jones talks about, if you wanted to top last year, Fifth Gate definitely would have been the message that could have done that. But again, the investment of that $6 billion is all pretty much spent from what I've read too. Where they're putting that into parks, there's already plans in place.
Well, and again, 2 new cruise ships, they're not cheap.
No,
so,
I understand.
Yeah.
And on the other side, one of the things I do find kind of interesting as well is that some of the quiet things that were talked about that didn't really show up as major announcements, but still were addressed were things we've already talked about on the show. They're going to work on infrastructure around Magic Kingdom, transportation, those were the things I was glad to hear because we addressed that as issues when they were building Lakeshore and the unreliability of the monorail at this point, the lack of transportation in and out of Magic Kingdom, and
so hey Hope, Walt over on Mouse Talk just read the Encanto ride description, so if we could say it too, we'll pull that up for you. Go ahead, Hawk.
But I think those are some of the underlying things that I was relieved to hear come out of D23, that, some of these problems that not even are in the parks, but getting into the parks, are being addressed. And I think, infrastructure, parking, transportation, all major issues for all this growth coming in. If when they're completed, you're going to see an increased draw, and you're going to have more people around and more locals coming out to try to get in. They've got to address some of those things. So that's a huge statement. That, that one was very relieving to see that they're addressing the additional issues rather than just park expansion.
Yeah, and so to the point there of the Encanto attraction, there was another bit here, and I'll pull this up for you just to answer your question here. Kyle, by the way, says, "Wish they came out and said we're going to call Tropical Americas Tropical Americas." Tropical Americas, but I thought
they were going to call it Tropical Villains Land.
Tropical Villains Land, exactly. You're in tropical Indiana Jones. Indiana Jones in a bathing suit. So here's the detail. So they talked about it, Hope, that it's going to be called, and the dark ride that's going to be inside Casita is going to be called Antonio's Fiesta de Encanto. And so it's, first of all, interesting thing, and they really emphasize this twice for a couple of different attractions, that there will be no height requirement. And part of me wonders, is that a slight dig at Universal? Do you guys think?
No.
Do you think?
No, I think it's
So-
a,
I think it's honestly going to be a little bit of a disappointment for the intensity of the ride. Like, that does concern me a little, to be honest. I like a ride with a little kick or a little something behind it. This
Right.
makes it sound like it's going to be a small world, or
Well, and so it's going to be a dark ride of some sort, behind the scenes. It's sort of a film to take all these colors and excitement out and allow audiences to immerse themselves. We didn't get a ton of details for it. There were a couple of renderings, which I'm not seeing here. This is the post, by the way, from the Disney Parks blog. They did also announce that there will be a new carousel, in the Carousel de los Animalitos, and they did show some examples of the carvings from that, which is kind of interesting. Kyle says there needs to be a scene on the ride where Mirabelle's mom feeds you an empanada. It wouldn't be nice. So anyway, there's going to be quite a bit of updates on that more. Hope, and by the way, welcome to Mousecast. Glad to have you here. I think you're new to us, so welcome. Hope you'll come join us each week. So, guys, the thing that to me, though, getting to Villains Land, getting into all of these, most of these, we didn't get specifics. And I understand that the economy, I think, is why. Would it have made a difference to you if they said, okay, here's all the stuff with Villains Land, and it's coming in 2029? Would that have been worth, or would that have been oh my gosh, it's that far out that it's better not to say the date?
I would have been scared if they said 2029. I'd have thought that'd been too close. I'm going to be honest with that. Because I think Villains Land has to be so perfect that if it is rushed in any way to try to meet a deadline, they're going to choke out and they're going to have disappointment, and it's going to be underwhelming.
Kyle says he's kind of surprised no Magic Kingdom Space Mountain overhaul announcement or Blue Sky idea. It was very interesting because there were some very, very promising rumors that Space Mountain in Magic Kingdom was going to be addressed, but it turned out to be other places.
One of the things I think that was very neat to see was the lift system for the Monstropolis coaster, like seeing that 40-foot climb and how you're going to load. Very intriguing to me. Now, here's the funny part, because we've seen concept art from Disney before and been promised stuff, and upon delivery, it's way different. So, we've talked about it before. Universal produces what the picture is. Their concept art to reality is almost interchangeable. Disney has not been great with that, and we've all stated that we'd like to see an improvement with what they say is going to happen with the reality to be in alignment, right? So that ride looks amazing with that. I think, to your point, there's been talk in several other theme parks that has already been designed for these new water rides that are track based, but are able to sink and submerge and lift up and move. And it's kind of like a roller coaster, but in a water format. I think you may see that as the other secondary
attraction. Yeah.
Ride in Villains Land is a new technology, a new kind of water ride that has been tested now and is being mass produced in other parks. So I think what you're going to see is some very dramatic and interesting new ideas. What I'm fearful of is still the fact that they're going to Disneyfy it and bring it back to such a simplistic and family-friendly form that people are going to be underwhelmed. I hope that they continue to push the envelope a little bit and get some of those, the new Muppets coaster, they kidified the theming, but they kept the same ride. It's still a thrill coaster.
Mm-hmm.
So I'd still like to see that kind of coaster be at Disney in a couple of other parks. Expedition Everest, they're trying to bring it back to ramp up the skill of it again by fixing the Yeti. Those little subtle changes and thrill rides like that, I think Disney needs to do more of that edgy aspect. And I hope as they move forward that becomes something they actually follow through with and not just talk about.
Well, we do know that Villains Land is going to be huge because they've compared it to Galaxy's Edge. And Galaxy's Edge, I mean, you stop and think about it, it takes up a good amount of space. I mean, there's a lot of real estate there in Galaxy's Edge. And so, compared to some other lands that are around that don't use quite as much.
To your point,
Mark says, Epcot looks nothing like its concept art.
But to that point, though, Chuck, in all seriousness, like Galaxy's Edge, okay, 2 attractions, all right?
Mm-hmm.
If they do the same with Villains Land, is that enough? Are you overall?
Well, so the difference with Galaxy's Edge, I will say that they have 2 attractions, but there are multiple experiences in Galaxy's Edge with, being able to do the droids, being able to do the lightsabers and all that. So Galaxy's Edge gets a bit of a pass on that.
But
also with the data pad and all that.
Okay,
I don't know that you can get away with that at Villains Land, though.
So, but here's the question, Chuck. We walked through Galaxy's Edge less than a week ago on a Saturday. There was nobody in Droid Depot making a robot. Nobody. Not one person on a Saturday. Okay? Lightsabers. I don't know how hard it is to get a reservation now, but I imagine it's not nearly as what it was. It's kind of like it's become a norm.
The novelty is worn off.
Correct.
Yeah.
So what do you need? You need some kind of new attraction. You need some kind of new statement piece in there. You need, now, if they retheme it like Disneyland and bring the original characters back.
I will tell you, that was the one other thing I was kind of expecting, because that's such a low-hanging fruit.
But, so to Danny's point, people are also not spending that extra money right now. So, they're cutting back. And that's what concerns me with some of this stuff, because if hotels are at 70% occupancy, which is where they generally, that's a pretty good week. If they're all at 70%.
70% is about what they want, yeah.
That's where that's comfort zone. You don't get the 100%, everything's full, everything else. But if they're floating at 70%, they're doing fine. When those numbers start getting down to 50 and 40%, and then they're offering discounts to try to fill rooms, and they're still not filling them, or, you're only getting people to go if there's ridiculous sales, they make their money regardless, don't get me wrong, but they're not making it as fast or at the volume. And they have to start being concerned about that. Jen and I were looking at the numbers of revenue out of parks. And I mean, they're impressive numbers. When you're talking, the parks make billions for Disney.
Oh, yeah.
It's impressive.
But it's the expense side of it, though.
But when you're talking $12 billion and you just invested 6 into doing stuff, it goes quick.
Yeah, Danny brings up Danny had Disney had a lot of offers this whole summer, and Kyle also says not filling rooms yet, building more hotels. And I did find it very interesting. That was something that my wife talked about. There was not a mention at all, even of talking about Lakeshore Lodge or anything like that. I found it just a little interesting that there was not even a mention, one bit, about Lakeshore.
I think it's almost done. So I mean, but it's interesting to see, because to Danny's point, if you remember last holiday season, they had a ton of specials too.
That was one of the first times in my knowledge or my memory where we had an offer for Christmas week. Normally, Christmas week is rack rate and slobber knocking crazy busy.
This is my
and then
point.
It was discounts. Really?
And we have gone into the parks in recent years on Christmas, on New Year's, and New Year's Eve is always bat poop crazy at Epcot.
Yeah, because they want the fireworks. So.
It's also a better party than Magic Kingdom.
Yeah.
And Magic's always busy on New Year's Eve. But the other parks, and during the day, it's been quiet. Like, we've gone in on Christmas and it's not what it used to be 5 years ago, 10 years ago. Like, it's not elbow to elbow, can't move, packed house. You're able to get around, and this is at Universal or Disney.
Mm-hmm.
So it does tell me that these high-end vacations are a struggle for some people, and they're not seeing the volume that they were. And cruise has gone up in volume for Disney, but I think they're now building too many ships. I think they're almost going to hit that saturation point with cruise ships. And then what happens? One
of the things with cruise, and this was another piece with Disney Cruise Line that they announced, is that they're really trying to, I think, get into the West Coast market a lot more, with more regular cruises out of the West Coast. I think some of those 2 new ships, to be bluntly honest, aren't going to be in the U.S. I think they're Asia-based. I think these are going to be global ships, that they're going to go to Asia. They might go to Australia, maybe more Europe. I don't think they're in the U.S. necessarily. And if they do U.S., they're going to move other ships out.
I know they're trying to increase San Diego sailings and do some other stuff over
San Diego and Los Angeles.
Yeah. So I know they want some more West Coast boats and everything else, but I just think, Florida's got a lot of cruise ships.
There's a lot of cruise ships coming out of Florida.
And, I know people that have gone over and done the cruises out of Shanghai and, done some of the other ships for Disney, and they love their cruises and they're wonderful. But I just wonder, with the economy, are they filling them? Like, how many people are going to be able to continue to do it at that rate? I mean, I heard someone talking the other day that they came to Disney for 2 weeks and did a cruise as well, and they spent like $26,000.
Oh, every bit of it
for them and their kids, and that was like the prepay, not the dining and the everything else. It was like 26 grand for the hotels, the tickets, and the cruise, and then the flights down, and then there's still 2 weeks plus a cruise in the parks.
Mm-hmm.
That's a salary for a year for a lot of people by the time they're done. Like, how long did you have to save for that? And like, when we were kids, Disney was often that once in a lifetime trip.
Yeah. Maybe once every 5 years, kind of thing like that. Yeah.
We have been spoiled with the opportunity to be able to go to Disney more often. And there's a lot of Disney fans that do the annual pass and go whenever they can and everything else. But it's becoming, what do you sacrifice to maintain your Disney? People are going to.
Danny says cruises tend to be the best bang for the buck. Cruises might fill before a week at Disney. And Kyle, thank you so much for being with us. I hope we'll see you next week. So thanks for being with us.
Sorry we didn't meet 22 minutes on Figment. We only got 18. I timed it.
Something like that. So That's right. But yeah, so and that's the thing is that. So here's as we kind of close this out, I'm wondering this about D23. Because when D23 first really kind of came about, it wasn't really intended as like to be Comic-Con and here's all these major announcements. It was a showcase of here's what's going on.
Yeah.
Is it returning to that now? Or have the fact that they used D23 to make some major announcements inadvertently set an expectation that's completely unsustainable?
I think it's a little combination of both. Like I honestly do. I think, I think they went so big last year they can't, like
Danny says it seemed to be a teaser convention.
This year it was kind of a teaser convention. I think, to Nick's point, if the economy doesn't tank, they may be just fine. But people are being much more cautious with money right now than they have been since COVID. From the tail end of COVID, everybody wanted a vacation so bad they were spending like willy-nilly. And that went through like early 2023 before it really saw the slowdown.
Yeah, that's kind of wrapped up. So
with the English and everything else. Now you've had more of a stable couple of years, but people are fearful of the economy. There's a lot of political tension. There's a lot of economic tension. There's a lot of stuff going on in the country right now. And, what do? You go into protection mode for you and your family a little bit. You want to make sure you have a little extra sitting on the side in case the poop hits the fan. So we want to make sure that we're doing what we need to protect us and our family, but that means people are spending a little less too. And it's going to be an interesting dynamic over the next couple of years to see, because as we've also discussed, when major construction's going on, people put trips on hold. I'll wait till it's done.
Right.
I want to go see it, because you might be back to that point where people can only go every 5 years or 10 years, or it's that once in a lifetime trip. So what do you want to do? Well, I want to wait till it's worthwhile. I don't want to go there when there's 4 parks under ridiculous construction and my ponytail is sweating. Megan, hope you're having fun.
Yeah, and see, that's the point. And that we talked about this a while ago, that 2025 was the year of construction. 2026 is the year of construction. And really, and now it looks like 2027 and beyond is going to be the year of construction. Yeah, and so, Disney... to parody a line from Walt Disney, that the parks will never be, Disneyland will never be completed. I think maybe you could substitute the word construction will never be completed. It seems like there's just perpetual construction always going. And that's kind of the nature of the beast these days. So,
but I think you also need to have a fully functioning aspect, like 1 or 2 areas down, or, like something like both Universal and Disney right now have multiple projects going on in multiple parks. So like when it's that much walled up, fenced off, changing the dynamic, it's not the same magic walking by 12-foot construction walls through an entire park. People criticized that for Epcot for years while the middle of that park was being reconstructed. That whole section of park just felt wrong for years.
Yeah.
Walking through that after they tore out the fountains in the middle and redid everything. And it's beautiful now, but that's part of the magic of going to those parks. So if I'm spending $25,000, $30,000 on a vacation, I don't want construction walls wherever I walk. I want to get wowed. I want to see the vision that Disney had. And I think that does pulse, even if it's 10% of the people into hesitation, that's 10% of your fan base.
Well, and that's the benefit that certain parks, like say a Busch Gardens in Williamsburg or whatever, has, because they do have a season. And so they can go down and go nuts on construction, and it's not going to bother guests because guests aren't there. That's not something that Disney or Universal can do, because they're open, year round, almost feels like 24/7. Not quite, but it feels like. And so, that's a challenge. That's an absolute challenge. So, we're going to continue this discussion. I'm sure there's going to be a lot more to talk about with D23, with Villains Land.
Yay!
Yeah,
More underwhelming D23 conversation.
Woohoo! But the whole point of why Disney is played it safe, and I think that's the way I'm going to kind of couch it is it was a safe D23, and I think it was, again, I go back to, and wrapping it up, this was the D23 I expected, and it's the D23 I got. It was not what I hope I was going to get. I wanted more detail. And, even, not necessarily new announcements. The Dreamfinder, great, love it. Fixing the Yeti, great, love it. New, totally redone Spaceship Earth, great. I'm looking forward to it. But we were expecting updates on existing projects, and I was really wanting updates, and that's what we didn't get.
I'll give you that, and I'll stand by the fact that it could have been an email, and I really wanted a handbook.
Yeah, I mean, it just didn't didn't really go there, and so yeah. So anyhow, as a reminder, though, we do then. Nick says I felt like if they kept the same things with more detail, it would have been fine. That's where I'm at. I would have liked to have seen more detail, and that's where I wanted is more detail. So,
and I think what they fear right now is commitment. And I say that in the manner of, I don't think they know what's coming, and there's some hesitation from stakeholders, shareholders, everything, that they've got to be careful not to overpromise. I say in my job all the time, I try to underpromise and overdeliver. Like, I think Disney is living in a world of underpromising and trying to overdeliver right now, because I think they're fearful that they know they're going to lose fan base if they under-deliver and overpromise.
Yeah. It's we said before, this was a critical time for Disney parks, and that has been the case because they to your point, especially Villains Land, I think quite literally all bets are on Villains Land right now. They have to get this right. But the problem is, does that build in institutional hesitation? Because you're working, and are you just too scared to put anything pencil to pen because you don't know if it's going to be the right thing or not? And in doing so, does it create some sort of form of institutional paralysis? Nick says, I think Piston Peak is going to be excellent. And I do think Piston Peak is going to be amazing. We saw some, apparently, and again, this is another part where we didn't get this. I would have liked to have seen some more coverage of D23 for the non-attending person. Apparently, there was a big, huge model, 3-dimensional model of Piston Peak, and I've seen posts from people going, "Oh my gosh, this thing looks amazing." Well, we never saw that, and I do think there's a missed opportunity. This should have been a Disney Plus thing, where it's, okay, let's go to the different pavilions that were there and let's do a whole recorded piece on the Piston Peak model. Let's do a recorded piece about pins and attractions. Yeah, Matt.
But then nobody's going to go to D23, so they're not going to get that revenue.
Oh, yeah, they will. Oh, yeah, they will, because it'll be after the fact.
But even so, if I can, like, literally, if I can just stay at home and catch the experiences thing, which is one of the big parts of it, I can sit at home and not spend a 6-hour flight to California, 6 hours and stuff like that, just sitting on my couch.
They do have to be, and Matt, you bring up a great point, because they do have to be careful about that, because they want to make sure they're getting attendance, they want to make sure they're selling tickets, and I know the fan base that goes there. But to Matt's point, that's part of why there was secrecy about the streaming schedule until the last minute. They want people to buy tickets and go. Then they'll release the stuff after the fact once they sell enough tickets and know people are coming. But if they just kind of digitize the whole process, to Matt's point, I'm just as content on my couch watching it on an 85-inch TV that I would be, and I'll probably see more than if I was running around trying to get through security gates and, fight my way to the front of an arena. it just, that wouldn't be the same experience for me. And, you know, I mean, they have to be conscious of that kind of stuff, and we have to be understanding of it. Vloggers, all the bloggers, the YouTubers, and everybody that go out to that, you're going to see every freaking thing, whether it's in a short, a vlog page, a YouTube video, a post up afterwards. You go, oh, that's really cool. I wish I would have seen that. But you'll see it. I mean, quick Google search, I can find you 500 videos of that model.
Oh, yeah, you can. I just would like to have seen Disney do it.
But
if it's going to be done, Disney should do it better. And Disney should do it. I'm not saying do it beforehand, but then do it after the fact.
They know the vloggers are going to put it out there anyway, so they're doing their job for them, essentially.
Yeah, exactly.
Then you can give a little bit of detail, and then like everybody speculate, like what we're going to do right now. Like it gives Disney that attention that like it gives them more attention that, you know, they can be like, oh, we're going to do this, we're going to do that. But
I mean,
now you get people's brains going. You get them maybe more excited about what's to come without giving it that much details and be like, hey, this looks really cool. I want to go see it when it finally opens, because I didn't get that. I got these 2 rides. Great. This is like, you know, what they're thinking of. But if they're not going to give me that much detail, then I want to go and see it and experience everything, because Disney didn't give me a whole lot, because they want you that imagination to run wild. So you will go to the park and see what they've come up with.
Okay, yeah, but here's the devil's advocate point to that, though. You're giving away what you could be good viewership of Disney Plus, and another reason, by the way, to subscribe to Disney Plus, and you're giving that away to the vloggers. So there's pieces to this. Go ahead, Hawk.
You're also giving yourself the opportunity to step back from something if it's presented in the way in which you don't want it. By letting it go out with vloggers, like you're creating a model, they're interpreting it, that you're not speaking on it or going into great detail.
Yeah, and you don't control the message at that point, and that's dangerous.
That's my point. So they have the ability to pull away from what got released. Let everybody speculate, because Disney didn't say it. They're not held to anything. There's no accountability in that aspect. They can make.
No. So this gets to kind of principles of PR now, but you always are in front of the message. You never, if you can at all possibly do it, you don't let somebody else control the message that you need to control.
No, I understand that. They're releasing what the ride's going to be, for example, with a model. But they're not.
Yeah, Mark gives an interesting comment, and he says the vloggers might give the feedback they're looking for to guide the projects. That'll happen regardless of whether you put it on D23 or put it on Disney Plus or not. So we're doing shows like this right now. So
yeah, I don't think the vloggers themselves have as much influence as people would like to think they do. I really do think it's a lot of fan feedback and actual conversation in parks. I think there's a lot more direct feedback that goes into things when you're talking to people at guest services, when they're getting actual guest experience back. Because vloggers, there's a whole element of people that can't stand vloggers because, you know, they get preferential treatment, they get different invites, they get kind of the special thing. I understand they're advertising for the parks, and that's great. And we have friends that are vloggers, and I mean, there's plenty of them out there that are amazing, great people that I've really enjoyed spending time with. But at the same time, I think Disney and other parks have learned that even though they push the stuff out, they're not driving what's happening. They're driving.
Well, and there's some data to prove that. There have been, not necessarily related to Disney, but to cruising, I've seen some data that, you know, influencers, only about 5-7% of cruisers say that influencers truly influenced their decision. You know, it was well under 10%. So I would imagine that you could correlate that to parks as well.
It's free exposure and advertising.
We're doing this right now. We've been, this is show 137. We've done 137 of these, you know, doing things to talk about Disney Universal.
33 people that have seen all those.
Yes. 33 people that have. So, but we also have more to come. And so, as a reminder, we are live every Tuesday night here on Mousecast. This was an extra special long show. We appreciate you guys being with us, especially if you're listening to us on the podcast right now. But we are live every single Tuesday night. Coming up next week, boys and girls, it's game night. I got to see what I come up with. It's going to be game night. Going to have a lot of fun with that. I want to say a huge thank you to Mark, to Nick, to Kyle and Danny, who were all with us as well. Chris was with us. Hope, new person has joined us. Welcome. Glad to have you here. So thank you all so much for being part of Mousecast, the podcast where the mind meets the magic. Be sure to share out that you've been enjoying Mousecast. Invite more friends to come and be part of the conversation. This is the best part of what we do. We get to talk to you and hear your thoughts and share your thoughts. And again, it's game night. You get to play along. And yes, you get to deal with Grumpy over there, Hawk, the grumpiness. So we definitely appreciate you being with us. And so, Megan, we hope you enjoy your time at Walt Disney World. Don't melt, at least not too much. But until next time, we'll see ya.
Thank you for listening to Mousecast. We appreciate the time you share with us. And tonight was a very fun show. And joining us is a must. This is where the mind meets the magic. We dive a little deeper every time. Theme parks, cruise ships, and travel. If you don't listen, maybe now it's time.